Hello and welcome to the Free to Be show. As you can see, I'm not alone today.
You are
I
not.
have I'm not. Who are you?
Yeah, who is this strange guy on the screen?
Yeah, so this is my guest co-host today, Stephen McGhee. Welcome, Stephen.
Hmm. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. And we're going to talk to you today about forgiveness. But remember, we start the Free to Be show with a few agreements. So as you listen to the intro, listen to what you are agreeing to. We'll be right back. Let's normalize that smiling is being present with your soul and accept that you have the power to replenish from within. Let's agree that you are the creator of your world. Own the energy of your words. Most importantly, replenish with your own smile. Welcome to the Free to Be show. I'm your host, Cordelia Gafar, the ultimate joymonger. My name literally means the heart of the ocean of forgiveness. Listen to this show as if you are excavating your life for places where you limit your own freedom. Are you free? Let's see.
I love that.
Thank you. Yeah. So are you in agreement with those things?
Yeah, more than an agreement. Like I'm excited about those things.
Yeah. Tell me more.
Well, I just think it's those agreements are choices, right? And there's some things we get to choose and some things we don't. Some things I don't get to choose. I'm not in control of the universe, that's for damn sure. But those are things I am in control of, and I get to choose those. So,
Yeah.
yay to that.
Yay for that. So, we were talking a little bit before we came on, and you were talking about how much gratitude you have for the work you do and the people you work with, your clients. And I was sharing that. It's funny because I'm going to read a poem that I wrote called I'm Grateful. So I'm going to go ahead and read that now. And good
Great.
morning, Wanda. Thank you for joining us. So I am grateful. Gratitude is not an attitude. It's in my DNA. It's in every breath I take and every word I say. For example, I declare that I am only always blessed. I declare that I never create being stressed. I am grateful to choose wisely with my words. Being that creates me as free as birds. I love to keep words basking in gratitude all day long. Doing that creates me being that and having it and never going wrong. How are you being gratitude today? Are you ready to play? Be a conscious observer of your thoughts. Be the pattern interrupt for the heavy ones. Be the cheerleader for the light ones. Be forgiving and gracious with your heart. Be kind and loving at the start. The transformation and information sought is within. An obstacle doesn't have to be a struggle, it is. You are more. Rename it opportunity, lesson, blessing. What you desire is what you're here for. Wake up every day and commit. Again, there's no guessing. Be your mission, your purpose, and be a stand. Know that you're enough. You are worth it, and you are in command. Beyond believing, know that you are the only one that can bring this and give it sun. Love yourself, sweet talk yourself, and walk with yourself until you are the essence of everything you desire incarnate. This is urgent. Don't wait the changing of your state. It is who you are being. That is, there is no compromise or disagreeing. The fact is less doing. More simplicity is the key. The fact is release the doubt because it's totally freeing. I know it's hard sometimes when you are seeing the manifestations of your past states of being, but that's the reason why you must create differently in this here moment of now. Otherwise, you will never know how to manifest differently with more of what you are looking for. close your physical eyes and see through your divinity that you are infinite and your possibilities mirror infinity. It is not a prayer, but a declaration and statement of fact. Be true to your words, feel them in your soul, and don't take them back. Be that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that, and for creating that. I think that, there's some words I find that are translated, which is fine. Like when I read a passage from a book, I might be translating what I'm reading as I read it. But then there's words that are transformed when they come out. Like, and there's a lot in that poem that comes from experience and from wisdom in your life and what you're grateful for. At least that's what I heard.
Yeah, this is true. Very, very,
I'm glad you can claim that.
very much so. So, in that I speak of forgiveness, and in that I actually chose to read that poem because we're talking about forgiveness is understanding, and I think when was that? I want to say that was probably in the spring when I wrote that poem. It dropped in for me that it's it's only in being in gratitude that it makes it easy for the heart to forgive, and the forgiveness is the lightness or the unburdening of my heart,
Mm,
which um yeah, which I'm grateful for.
me too. Like just the idea that we can let it go, that we don't have to hold on to judgment, resentment, blame, guilt, shame, that we have a way to clear it out, which isn't always easy, right? It's depending on what the judgment and the resentment and the blame is about, it can be sticky. It can really be in there. But I just for now, just the idea that we get to clear it out, we have an opportunity, a possibility to clear it out is pretty profound, I think. And I love what you said, like gratitude is kind of how I heard you say it, is it's access to the forgiveness.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm grateful that you heard that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Um and it's also like it keeps that energetic flow of reciprocity of, forgiveness, gratitude, which ultimately helps us to be free, right? And it's a vortex for creating more of what we actually want to bring into our lives instead of recreating the, I guess I'm going to say sometimes the mess that's already there, you know?
Mm.
A lot of people they will, let's say, for example, like get out of a relationship, but then, they'll start another relationship with a similar type person that ends in a similar type scenario. And that's just the manifestation of the vibration that they're carrying around with them, um, instead of releasing that. So, this is great that we're kind of philosophizing about forgiveness and gratitude, but like, how can people get to that point? What have you discovered in your work?
Well, what I've discovered is the willingness to do gives the ability to do. So
Mm,
I think a person, first has to slow down enough to take a look at the patterns that they're that well, I'll just speak about me. Like, where have I done the, I'm the common factor in my life. Like, so if I see a pattern that I've had before, and then it shows up again, and it shows up again, and let's just say it's not pleasant. Let's just say it's something I don't want to keep doing because it doesn't give me the result. Let's say, I'll tell you, one of my patterns in the past was being condescending,
Mm,
and it really came from being wanting to be in control or being afraid that I was being judged. So I could be condescending. So as a defense mechanism. So I have to be willing to look at that honestly. And I kind of have to be willing to do it without judgment, because if I'm so afraid of being condescending and being called out as condescending, I might deny that I'm condescending. So it's tricky, right? This is where it gets tricky to take out the garbage.
yeah,
But
I'm
then,
glad you brought that up. I just wanna, like, highlight that for a minute.
yeah,
Like, repeat that part again about when you worry about being condescending, that you might actually deny that you're being condescending.
for sure. And defend it and try to, blame the other person for not seeing my greatness, or seeing how, well, 90% of the time I'm a great guy, but yeah, 10% of the time I'm an asshole and I'm condescending. And we have to put the light in on this. I feel like we don't have to do anything. We get to put the light in on it. And when I do that, it's just like, okay, yeah, there's times where I can be condescending. And then I have some altitude, and then I might have some willingness to move into the forgiveness. Like, I forgive myself for judging myself, as condescending. And in your poem, at one point you say, like, close your eyes. And it's funny, if you look back, it's like I closed my eyes before you said close your eyes. So you were putting out the close your eyes vibe. But I went, I find, like, I can go right into, then, like, letting the judgment go, because that's the other thing. We could say the words,
Mhm.
but so what? We got to really be willing, at least from
Yeah.
my experience. What's your experience with those toughies?
Yeah, yeah. Well, before I actually answer that, I'm going to um, see what Wanda says. She says, "I believe that being still and allowing your inner voice to speak to you, because constantly moving, you can't connect with self or God."
Love that. Love
Yeah,
that.
I would agree. Like in the moment, in a similar scenario that that you brought up about being worried and about not coming off a certain way. So I told you I was connecting this morning, right? And so in that connection, I was explaining this you know, this dynamic of wanting to show up as a very loving person and finding it difficult because I'm distracted by the annoying behaviors of the people I'm dealing with. And it blocks me from being loving. But I'm so focused on, I need to be loving, right? That holding on to that judgment, of, I need to be loving, that I'm not loving at all. And then, then I'm like, look what I've just created. I've created like a lot of resentment and frustration in this moment. And, but it was very freeing to actually share that. And, and it gave me an opportunity to, in reflection, I actually don't think I apologized, but I did at least explain, what's happening for me, what's happening in my internal world. And now for the person that I'm talking about, with them understanding that about me, they were forgiving, you know?
That's beautiful. I mean, there's a lot in what you just said. I want to unpack some of that if you're willing. But the
Okay.
first thing I think is, who am I surrounded by? Surrounded by people that are forgiving, that can reflect back when I'm not at my best. Um, that's super helpful. We do become more like the people we spend time with, at least
Yeah.
in some kind of way. But I really love what you're saying about that, because it's so easy to get locked in on trying to be perfect, and or trying to be loving. And the fact is, we're spiritual beings having a human experience, which is a very common, kind of almost mainstream quote these days, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but that includes the shadows, and that includes the light, that includes all of it. But what I'm hearing you say is, being human it involves all of it. And I think that macro, you know, look at it is kind of like very freeing, since we're talking about freedom and liberation to be ourselves. It's like, what a beautiful thing to accept all of it. And that doesn't mean I want to maintain being condescending, or grow it in my life and be more condescending. It just means, hey, yeah, you're right. I was just being condescending. I was in fear, and I wasn't slowed down, and it was a reaction. And I forgive myself for that.
Yeah. I had tagged you on a post in LinkedIn. There's a conversation going on about you don't have to forgive yourself for anybody else. And I'm just curious, like, what is your viewpoint on that? I find that really difficult to believe. I feel like there were a whole lot of steps skipped over in that statement because, in my experience, the natural course of getting to a place to even consider forgiveness is like what you said, being with the shadows, right? Being with the ugliness of it in order to get to a place where you can accept that it's ugly and it's me. All right, I surrender to that, right? And then you're like, I understand that about myself, and so I'm going to just move forward and forgive myself, not judge myself about that. And then you can plateau, not plateau, then you can get to the understanding, and then it's going to, like, life is kind of a roller coaster, right? Like, what are you hearing?
Well, I'm hearing that we're all learning. All of us. Nobody's exempt from that experience. Not one soul will be lost uh, in that understanding of that we're human. And so what I'm hearing in all that is, yeah, acceptance for who we are. But the greater thing about that, I think, I mean, we're talking right now about like forgiving ourselves. And I think that's super important, because if I can't be gentle with myself and forgive myself for my transgressions or my judgments or the shit that I do in my life, then I'm going to have a really hard time forgiving others.
Exactly.
So that's kind of what I heard you start with the, what was going on in the feed in the social media world of, like, if I can't forgive myself, I'm really not going to be good at forgiving others in my life when I feel like I've been betrayed. So that's huge to me. Or forgive just what's going on in the world. Like, we would see through the lens of judgment and negativity.
Hmm.
Uh, I love that people are coming on. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah. So, hello, happy Friday, EPEC. She was with me in Houston last weekend. And Wanda's again saying it's good sometimes to let unloving happen just a moment, but not stay there. Yeah. It's great when we recognize it can tap into our gratefulness and change with, right?
Yeah.
It's freeing to let it go.
Yeah, I love that,
Wow.
Wanda.
Yeah, she's super insightful. She, I would say, is a very connected spiritual being.
Clearly, again, speaking to the words of transformation, Wanda's words are not translated. Those are, those are words she has experienced. And I've never met Wanda, but I can
Hmm.
I can feel the vibe and the frequency of that. And that's really cool.
Yeah. All right. And we got a question here. If we can't control others, why then do we need to forgive them for their actions?
Well, I mean, we could probably, Hugh, thank you for the question. I think it's a common question a lot of us ask, and I've asked it many times in my life. But the simple answer, and then I want to hear what you have to say about this, but for yourself.
Hmm.
Because if I'm carrying around a judgment on another, it's in my language, I'm carrying it around. The trash is in my room. It's
Right.
not in theirs. They may not even know that they've done something that I didn't like. Or, I mean, I've had these in this there are people running around right now in the world that I think betrayed the crap out of me. And
Yes,
they don't
right?
even think that they have. So I'm running around with the garbage in my own head and my own heart and my own body at a cellular level running in my life. And they're like off having fun somewhere in Aspen skiing or whatever they're doing. So I think that, Hugh, is the reason, but it isn't easy. Like, I have compassion for that question.
Hmm.
What do you see in that?
I totally resonate, as you can see by my reactions to what you were saying. Like, it's about unburdening my soul. It really isn't about the other person, right? Because speaking on the cellular level, I'm going to deplete my nervous system and my immune system by belly aching over this judgment that I have from this person, right? And even if I've had that conversation and they think we're good, and I'm still holding on to that, and they're like, they've moved on and living and loving life, I'm the one that suffers. I'm the one that's killing myself for no reason, you know? So I resonate with that. And EPEC says forgiving is not condoning. So there's that piece, right? When we forgive, we release ourselves. It
Mm,
is for us rather than for the other one.
beautiful. And that's why I think I forgive myself for judging another rather than
Hmm.
I'm forgiving them. Right?
Yes. Yeah, that's what the forgiveness, it's not really forgiving the other person. It's actually forgiving the judgment you have. If what they say is true, okay, however, if what they say is false, why would I hold on to it? What are you reading there?
Well, I'm not quite sure what Hugh is saying there, other than to me, it doesn't matter whether it's true or false, um, because I can't control what other people do. In the moment I do try to control what other people do, again, uh, that's a hard game, and I will never win that game. I can only, and I don't even know if I would use the word control. I might use the word look at, or be willing to look at, like, what are my thoughts about that situation. I believe in a statement called, use everything for my learning, growth, and advancement. So if something occurs, whether I like it or I don't like it, whether it's true or whether it's false, I want to look at getting altitude on that and using it for my growth and advancement, for my own joy, inspiration, upliftment, and freedom. And I think sometimes many of us can get kind of hooked into whether it's true or it's not true what they did or they didn't do, and I'm going to somehow punish them. But while I think I'm punishing them, I'm just punishing me. And this is a tricky one, because it's like also, in addition to being condescending, I've gone through patterns of being self-righteous. Like, I'm gonna,
Not you.
yeah, oh yeah. like inside me, like I'm gonna get you back for that. Like, oh yeah, really? All the while I'm suffering.
Yep.
All the while I'm not creating in my own life.
Hmm.
All the while I'm not producing the wealth and the generosity and the prosperity that is bestowed upon me through God, through the Spirit. Like all the while I'm suffering even more. How do you see that? It's a great question that he was asking us.
Yeah, I
Great
love that
statement.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah. I I feel that all things are for the elevation of my soul,
Mm.
so I do agree with you on that. And then there's the world of, in this world, many truths can exist at the same time. So again, I'm hearing judgment or I'm reading judgment in that question because, like, who am I to say that what they said is true or false, right? Like, it's their truth, right? I have a different truth. And just releasing that part of judging whether or not what they said was true or false is it elevates my soul to begin with. So we're getting lots of comments, and I want to go to a commercial break, but let's just see what we've got here.
Okay.
Um, we'll look at a couple.
Okay.
I've been there for of unforgiveness, and it affects you deeply. Yeah, pain in my body, sleepless nights. Yep. However, um, have to get to that point of bitterness and not forgiving. Yeah, that
Yeah.
happens.
So, oh, there's Cynthia. Hi,
Yeah.
Cynthia.
Hey, Cynthia. So glad you got to the judging. Yeah, such a great way to insinuate forgiveness past the ego's resistance to surrender from our own positionality, right? So,
Great comments, and so good to see you, Cynthia, too. But really, I think, one of the things Wanda's saying is like, it's part of the journey to go through that, until I use simple metaphors, but like if my house has a bunch of garbage in it and it's starting to stink, maybe that's part of the process of me going, I don't want it to stink in my house. Like I want to take the garbage out. So even that's something that's part of the process. Like I can relate to what Wanda has said. Like my life experience is so much more free and inspired now that I've gone through the times in my life where I've, done such judgment.
yeah.
Hi,
Hey,
Peter from
Peter.
Canada.
Yeah. So this is the person that I met this weekend, and he was
Uh-huh.
talking about forgiveness. And yeah, he interviewed someone on his show that was talking about forgiveness as well. So
It's an
thank you for
important
joining us,
topic
Peter.
these days, right? Like there's just a lot in the collective mind and the collective consciousness that's kind of cynical and negative, and many of us are caught up in that narrative. And I just prefer this narrative. this is
Right.
this one feels a lot better to me.
It's so much lighter, right? It's so much more freeing. So yeah, we'll be right back, and we'll dive into some more ways to get to understanding. Let's replenish. Practicing self love is to nurture the soul. And to nurture the soul requires elemental reconnection with nature. Fire is your sexuality, and earth, your mindset. Air, your voice, and water, your heart set. Replenish Me St. Martin experience is what you require for your soul. Join me February 19th through 25th in 2023. Release, restructure, refresh, and rebirth. Nurture your soul elementally in St. Martin. You want to?
Dang, that looks fun.
I know. You want to come?
That looks beautiful.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. So what are some more ways? We've already offered one way to get ourselves to forgiveness. What are some more things that we could get there?
Well, I think we talked about, willingness, and then, whatever the process is for each individual, the one that I like is what I stated, which is I want to get in touch with the judgment. I
Mm,
can't be afraid of that bad boy or bad girl. I got to like get in. I want to get in touch with the energetic of it, and
mm,
I want to experience it because it's doing something in there.
mhm,
It's doing something, as you mentioned, at a cellular level, not to mention mentally. I mean, because then I have a thought about the judgment, and then the thought leads to the emotion, and then the emotion turns into despair, and then the despair turns into sadness and anger, and then I wonder why my life is not working. So I think getting in touch with it and letting it go, like I forgive myself for judging this thing and really let it lift and clear. And for me, I like to do a calling in of the light. So I'll like ask for the light to clear me of the judgments that I have, and then fill, surround, and protect me. That's just one method, but it's
mm.
one that works for me. So um, there we go, like another layer of getting into the layers that are in there that I might be judging, and really experience the space that gets created in my body, mind, heart, and soul. Although the soul is pretty free already.
It is,
Yeah.
unless we try to attach something to it, which we can do sometimes,
Mhm.
with certain vibrations that we hang on to for too long.
Yeah.
So for me, I've found that breath work is super powerful, um, because just like I think Hugh here, he is, like, this is a heavy one, right? Once I forgave the drunk driver for killing my daughter, I released him from also killing me. My entire self was free to become me,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
So, like, for heavy stuff like that, that really gets in there, like on a cellular level. I told you, I had an experience in my life where someone tried to kill me, right?
Mhm.
And it took me 10 years, but I released that. But it took me more than the willingness. It took me more than allowing myself to sit, with the light and clear it. I had to like get in there and restructure my nervous system with some serious breath work. And I don't even know what happens with breath work, but it's like just a belief, a release beyond anything that I've ever experienced. So there's like a whole lot of there's a lot of work that we have to do, you know.
Well, I'm so grateful that these deeper, let's just call them bigger judgments have been brought forward, the one you brought forward and the one Hugh brought forward, because to me, yeah, that's an excavation, and absolutely, I'm a big believer in breath work because I think breath work can bring up and out those things that I have stuffed, that old metaphor of the beach ball, like have you ever tried to hold a beach ball down underwater in a swimming pool?
Yeah, that doesn't work.
It's really takes a ton of energy, right? And it's kind of like squirrely, and I'm like, I can do this. And then eventually I let that up and it comes up with a lot of force. So yes, the deep work that is required to pull those things up and out on the bigger, deeper, life-changing judgments that have occurred for most of us, if not all of us.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's I think I skipped a couple of comments from Wanda. Sorry about that, but you're driving and typing. Okay, we're gonna have to talk about that. I'm texting you right after.
No
No,
judgment, Wanda.
no judgment, Wanda, but that's not safe. Hey, Nicholas, thank you for being here.
Hey,
Oh,
Nicholas. Oh, great.
do you know Nicholas Smith?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah. Wake Up with Giants Network. That's where we
He's the
are.
giant.
Yeah, he's the giant. I talked to the small the other day.
Ah,
Ry
Ryan.
Ryan, if you watch this. Okay, holding on to him negatively was destroying my days, and I couldn't heal. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, way to save your own life, Hugh.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Aw, and Heather, thank you for being here. Yeah, so, I think that the the excavation that really is required to, uh I call it for me, like, in my experience recently, I would say it's more of a surrender to just, like, I've gotta forgive all the judgments I'm holding on to because it's swallowing me whole, and I don't wanna live like this anymore, you know? I wanna allow my soul to be elevated or, like, whatever. So, like, in Islam, whenever there's a lot of hardship that just, like, it seems like life is coming at you, it's an understanding that this is a new maqam, it's called, like, a new station that you're being raised to, and, just surrendering that, "Oh, this is happening for me. It's not happening to me.
Mhm.
This is actually, an opportunity here. So how willing am I going to be with this?"
Mhm.
And of course, I do the toddler thing for a couple of days, like have my tantrums and go kicking and screaming until I don't. And then, yeah, and then I allow myself to be with all the emotions that the judgment brings up for me. Yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with kicking and screaming.
Okay.
Like, I think more of us need to do more kicking and screaming than we do. There's a story, I won't belabor it or go into detail on it. I think it's in Dan Millman's book, The Way of the Peaceful Warrior, or maybe his second book, but it's a story where he's watching his house burn down with all of his precious belongings in it. And while it's burning, it becomes clear that the house is not going to be saved, nor
Hmm.
anything in the house. So it's going to burn to the ground. So he gets on the ground and kicks and screams and cries and really guttural, like really getting it up and out. And as the story goes, he stands up and he wipes his eyes and he walks free.
Hmm.
Like he was willing to let go, at least in the story, of what was going on to such a depth that he could get free in it and of it.
Hmm.
And I think sometimes we are trying to hold it together, and sometimes for good reason. Like there might be a time and place for kicking and screaming. I don't know. But I know that when I've done that, and even as a man, to put my head in a pillow and let myself sob and cry is a great way of releasing and opening things up so that I'm not carrying it around and it manifesting later as extra weight, manifesting later as some sort of disease in my body. So, love what you're saying. Thanks for bringing out the kicking and screaming elements.
I love that you brought up as a man, because let's talk about that for a minute. I recently was talking about uh, toxic masculinity in women and men, but like for men, there seems to be this stigma like, oh, you cannot cry, suck it up. But to actually not only cry, but like full body cry is what I was hearing you say, um, is so powerful and so healing. I think that's like the fastest healing ever, Those like get on my face on, well, I don't use a pillow. I just get on the floor and just like like I really kick and scream like a proper toddler because I've, 6 kids, so I know what that looks like. I was like, you
You've been
know
well
what?
trained by your kid. You've been
That's
reminded by
right.
your kiddos.
Yeah, and I'm like, man, that looks like that must feel great. So, and it does. Oh, I love it. So, and more men should do it. Allow yourself to be with that.
Yeah, so Heather brings up a point that she beat me to the punch. Thank you, Heather. But it's so if I can't experience my despair and I can't experience my anger or my sadness, I'm probably not going to be too good at experiencing the joy.
Hmm.
So, for people that know me, I can see a sunset and get teared up. But that's only because, and by the way, this hasn't come easily to me. So the men out there listening, Nicholas, this one's for you too, my brother. Uh, and Hugh and others that are listening, Peter, the other men on the, it's like, it wasn't natural for me.
Hmm.
I wasn't taught that by what you mentioned earlier, Cordelia. It's like the collective is like stoicism is better, strength in a man does not involve vulnerability. I call BS to that. Like and I think more and more people are awake to it. It doesn't, it just adds to my strength. It adds to uh, my willingness to be resilient and experience all of life. So I'm not going to
Yeah.
stay there. You're not saying, oh,
Mm-mm.
I'm going to kick and scream for the rest of my life. You're like getting it up and out.
Yeah. And I think I skipped Heather. I love all the comments. I'm glad that this is a conversation that people are willing to have.
Yeah.
It's better than harming others. Finding a healthy way to grieve is vital. Yeah. Oh, Nicholas, I cry a lot and it's not it's not natural. I was taught not to cry. I
Yeah.
was punished for crying. Oh my God. What?
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Nicholas. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like a relearning. I mean, I learned, relearned to let it up and out and cry. Yeah.
Mm.
Who would have thought we'd be talking about crying today?
Well, of course we would be, right? Because we're talking about
You, of
forgiveness.
course.
Well, me, I'm a cry. Well, I'm not gonna say I'm a crybaby. I cry a lot. So I knew it was gonna happen. I'm just surprised that we're not crying. We're like, we're laughing. Oh, what Hugh said. I've given the gender divide back to man and stepped into my spiritual being. There you
Hmm.
go. Yes, being shamed for feeling must go. Yeah. We're talking about humans. There it is. Yeah.
Yeah, there it is.
We're humans. How about that, Stephen?
Human beings.
Yes, not human doings.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I want to add that in here that forgiving is not something that you do. It is a way of being. Kind of like in my poem, I start out that gratitude is not an attitude, it is in my DNA, right? So all these things are already there. And all we have to do is allow them to, free them. And when we do that, like you said, then that's how the joy emerges, and that's what we were actually built for. We're created for bliss. We're not created to be miserable and hold on to judgments and shame and guilt ourselves. We're only always supposed to be light, you know? What do you hear with that?
Well, I don't know where this quote came from. I think it's Byron Katie, but all suffering comes from a thought only always. So I I get to watch that and see how that impacts my inner landscape. So what a beautiful thing as a human being. I love what you said about being. Forgiveness is a state of being. The keys to the kingdom, whatever kingdom you believe in, is through forgiveness. Really think about that. Like breathe that in as a listener today, as a person that's in this conversation, because I really see this show as a conversation. This isn't like you and I having a bunch of answers or anything like that. This is just like we're laying something out and people are participating even in thought right now.
Yeah.
Like we are building something here with what's happening, even if person is listening and not typing, it's like we're creating something here that is steeped in the freedom of forgiveness. And so being is perfect, which we talked about the last time we came together on a show, right? We talked a lot
Yeah.
about beingness, and the easiest thing to do is to be the Free to Be show. What a perfect title, It's the easiest thing and maybe the hardest thing at the same time. But I just want to encourage people to breathe in that we can be in this state of forgiveness very quickly through a breath,
Hmm.
breath and letting go. So yes, there's the deeper big judgments, some of which have come up today. Deep excavation. You said 10 years on the one where you worked on. And
Yeah.
then I think there's a kind of a maintenance, of really each breath and being present with each breath in a way that I let it go, the judgments that come into my beingness, into my mind.
Yeah.
How do you hear that?
You know, I was hearing some things and I was actually going to say something, but I got distracted because I was actually reading the comments. That's the one thing about the show being live because I'm like,
Uh-huh.
less flow.
You're
But
doing beautifully, by the way, of doing multitasking.
thank you. Thank you for that. So how am I hearing that? I would say definitely if I allow myself, and I guess this is what distracted me because I resonate with it when Nicholas is talking about his darkness, right? I I think about that 10-year period where I was vacillating between like I guess it was more of a toggle. It was like some days I'd be like really in the that's okay, like I can let that go, you know. But and then there would be days where it's just like, remember what you were saying? Yeah, I'm gonna get that person back. You know, it's like I'm gonna make their life so miserable, like and what did I do with that? I became an alcoholic for a period of time, actually. Nobody really, this is something I don't want anyone to know about me. Before I became Muslim, I held on to shit so heavy that I almost drank myself to death. And that's
Yeah.
actually one of the reasons I became Muslim, because I was just like, I need something that can really keep me accountable, on a regular basis and just be with my emotions, be with my soul and understand what is gratitude. So like uh, the first 5 years that I became Muslim, I was like really practicing gratitude, and that was a kicking and screaming thing for me too. I was like, man, I'm grateful. It was just I was so stubborn. Oh my gosh, not that I'm not stubborn anymore, but it was yeah. So that's where my mind went to when I was listening to you and actually reading that comment. So wow, we're cruising. We still have quite a bit of time left. Let's look at some of these comments. What about all the people who died before we had to ask forgiveness? Will they get the opportunity to join the kingdom? I'm gonna, I don't know if you want to answer that question. I feel like, because you were saying the kingdom, I don't really want to get into like religious schools of thoughts. I just bring up that I'm Muslim because I am, not that I'm proselytizing Islam or Christianity or anything else, but it's just, a lot of people are not aware of the theology, in Islam. And so I like to to bring that into the conversation. So I
I
don't know.
love I love it. I think that one of the beautiful things about this conversation and many that are happening is the diversity in it. Like,
Yeah.
I just feel like it's time for all of us to embrace diverse ways of being and diverse ways of thinking. And what I would say to Hugh is just, and again, this isn't me being like right about it, but when I use the word kingdom, what I really mean is the inner kingdom. Like, I have a place inside. I would almost call it like a sanctuary
Mm-hmm.
where I can drop into the sanctuary inside. So my point of view about it, not that it's the right one, is that we all have access to that sanctuary and to create greater peace and levels of freedom in that place. And interestingly, most religions or non-religions or methods or thoughts or nature lovers or fly fishing masters, and there's so many of us going for the same thread, which is the peace. So that's what I'm focused on. Like,
Mm.
when I work with people, I'm not working with them on what's your method. I'm working on what's your intention toward greater freedom, greater peace, greater joy. And I think sometimes many of us can get kind of caught up in the language of it. And
Mm-hmm.
um, but what I'm practicing, and I'm noticing even now as I speak it out, is like, you know, really allowing people their own journey, and loving that. Like, everyone has the dignity of determining what their way is, what their method is. So what kingdom means to one person might mean something different to another. But I think that's part of this diversity and part of this conversation and part of accepting and
Yeah.
cooperating with the people in my world,
Mm.
not just
Yeah.
in my life. Like, there's something everyone can show me and teach me if I'm willing, back to that word again, to hear.
Yeah.
But this is what I love about these formats. Like, we all get to chime in. So I love
Yeah.
that you shared about being Muslim and how you were looking at a time in your life when you were drinking heavily. You said, I think, almost drinking myself to death or something like that. Like, you were looking for a way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Indeed, I was. I was in, yeah, and that particular day that I decided to stop drinking, I was like, God, please show me the proper way to worship you, because surely I'll kill myself,
Hmm.
And yeah, and that literally opened like the light, into my life. And yeah, and I'm here now. So I love the ultimate joy monger phrase. Yeah. Thank you, Heather.
Yeah.
Mm.
Thank you, Hugh. I like I like the word light, because I think it's one most of us can embrace. Like, I just would say I like to bring in the light, and what that means for different people are different things. Like, to some it might mean one thing, to another. But even the brain, I know you know some about neuroscience. The brain we know it's like electricity. There's light in there. So
Yeah.
it
It
opens new neurons and neuroplasticity, and forgiveness does that as well. It gives us a new highway for freedom. It gives us a new highway for peace. um, Lots of cases out there where we see people stuck in the muck and the mire, and through forgiveness, acceptance, and cooperation, coming out and through it into greater peace and liberation. And they're some of the greatest healers on the planet.
Yeah.
They understand, as Nicholas was saying, they understand the shadows. They understand what it's like to really hate something.
Yeah, and they understand what it's like to reverse, like, breast cancer and,
Hmm.
pancreatic cancer and, thyroid conditions. because that's really what this does to you if you hold on to it over time. And we don't just turn 50 years old and like, oh my God, my whole body's falling apart. Yeah, well, you kind of chipped away at it, throughout your life, holding on to these different energies and not releasing them, not being willing to restructure your life a different way and and refresh with the light, letting the light in and rebirth anew. And,
Yeah.
even, like, with the title of the show, like, when I first changed the name from Replenish Me to Free to Be, it was like, free to be back then meant, um, just free to be me. Like, it actually could have been the Free to Be Me show, right? But now free to be is more like free to be, to exist, to be in my beingness, to, um just whatever is, and be with those things and examine that. Most people don't know this, but Stephen is there. Yeah. Or you could turn those numbers around.
Oh, and add a few years, by the way, but,
Yeah, I know how old you
yeah,
really are.
yeah.
True grief is essential for joy. After losing a child, I had to grieve, or it would come back around. By honoring my grief, I was able to receive joy and peace. Yeah. There's a book, I haven't read it yet. Maybe you've read this book. It was a collaboration with the Dalai Lama and Bishop Tutu. And they were talking about joy. And they said only people who have experienced extreme trauma know true joy. And so, like as we're talking about words that create your world, that's why it landed for me. I'm the ultimate joy monger, because it's like, yeah,
I love it that you claim that so graciously. I love it. I mean, hey, ultimate joy, bringing more joy. Love it. I want to go back to what Heather said a little bit because one thing I've learned in my life is that anybody I've met and I've really gotten to know, and through some of the work I've done, and through the work I do, I really get to know people. And at first glance, I can remember kind of judging, speaking of judging, like what a person looked like. And I would presume or assume what their life had been like.
Hmm.
And people have done that a lot with me, like look at me and go, I'm a white guy. And it's like the judgment could be, well, he must have had it easy or whatever the things are. I have just really learned to let all that go and get to know who a person really is. Like Heather's, like how would I have ever known that Heather went through something like that unless I spent the time to really get to know Heather? What
Hmm.
I've learned though is we all, almost without exception, have gone through such heavy stuff that it has either helped us to become more free or it's crystallized some negativity. But in
Hmm.
either case, that person is doing the best they could in that moment. So my point in this big riff here is about compassion.
Hmm.
Like I really want to lead with compassion because I just don't know because a person looks a certain way what they've been through, what their childhood was like. I was telling a client yesterday one little story. I crawled across a mud field when I was 7 with my raging alcoholic father.
Hmm.
There were three. I had two brothers, a sister, myself, and my mother. Long story how we got there, but we were crawling across a mud field to escape my father's father, my grandfather, who was
Hmm.
carrying a shotgun. And
Hmm.
it's like those times at that age, as we all know, can be very difficult and they can create ways of thinking that we have to unravel. My point in sharing that isn't that like that's just one thing in my life. We all have them. Is to consider compassion for self,
Hmm.
like to be gentle with ourselves as we unwind and as we navigate these things that occur in life, right? And as we become more compassionate for self, I think we walk in the world with greater compassion. Because if I'm super hard on myself with everything I've been through, I'm probably going to be hard on you.
Mm-hmm.
What's your experience of that?
Yeah. First of all, I want to acknowledge the fact that you are a white man.
I
And
am.
I love that you brought that up because, I met a guy on the plane. He was like, white men are taking a hit these days. I was like, well, I actually disagree with that. Humans are taking a hit these days.
Yeah.
If you have a heart and you have compassion, then you're not loved. You're taking a hit. So I totally resonate with the self-compassion piece. That's like what my replenish me process is all about. It's like have the self-compassion to know how to nurture yourself and create a practice of self-nurturing,
Mm,
which it's so important to know how to nurture yourself, because if you do, then you know how to nurture someone else, like truly, not the people pleasing way that a lot of us are conditioned to do, but like genuine, like deep, compassionate nurturing that
mm.
humans require
Yeah,
to
beautiful.
live. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's so many amazing comments coming through that I've lost track to when people brought them in, but I'm going to start with Cynthia again. Um, what you're describing, using the light is one way to navigate out of the neutral pathway where my wounded, traumatized part is seated and the
Go,
reptile
Cynthia.
blame. Yeah,
Yeah.
man, Cynthia, you are like such a light. You should be on this. I wish I could just like send you the link real quick and you can come in here, but you may not be camera ready next time. So yeah, my spiritual self resides in joy and freedom. Yeah, you're such a beautiful being. Speaking of light, um,
Indeed.
yeah, and Wanda says free to be your truth. Yeah, Wanda and I go back a bit, probably 6 years now. My grief is celebrating and honoring the love. And yes, it's
Yeah.
honorable and true love has grief when someone leaves. Yeah.
Yeah. That's tough.
Yeah, so much there. I appreciate everyone, and I want to acknowledge everyone, whether I actually read and showed your comment or not, for being here and being in the conversation, not just with us, but with yourself. Take this conversation into your day and into your next week. Actually, I'm going to continue on with a panel discussion next week about forgiveness. We're going to end with a panel on what is it called? Forgiveness to heal, or the healing of my soul. So, yeah, really, I want to acknowledge and express my gratitude for everyone who showed up here today live, and for those of you who watch on the replay or just listen to the audio. Maybe you're listening on Apple Podcasts now. Do feel free to connect with me and share your thoughts. I love the emails. So it's hello@cordeliagaffar.com if you'd like to send me anything. Living in gratitude, I no longer have to seek something to be grateful for. It's always here.
Yeah, it's true. It's always, I agree with you, and it's just there, always there. And I know we're rounding the bend here, Cordelia. I want to say thank you for creating this space and for holding such a beautiful space for forgiveness as understanding in the Free to Be show. I believe that there's a ripple effect that occurs with a conversation like this, so that each person goes out into their day. And I know the people here listening live or on the recording will take it out and will create light in the world. So
Yeah.
thank you for the format.
Yeah, it's my joy. So, thank you for being here, Stephen. Will you actually come back another time? What did you think? Did you really enjoy it, truly? Okay, okay. We'll talk. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, and hello to everyone.
All right. Until next week. So, are you free? Do you own your part in that? Rather than lingering in shame, guilt, and despair, let's see where you can create more freedom, more joy, and replenish from within. Visit me at cordeliagaffar.com and sign up for the 5 ways to only create joy. Until next week, be free.